I found a set of old vintage slideshow photos of the excavations around the ancient city of Girsu in Sumeria. We love to look into these ancient sites and stuff, and it's real neat to look at when they were excavating it and how they went through it, and how it revealed itself. Now, this land here is, of course, in between the Tigris and Euphrates. This is the area that was mentioned in the Bible as being Eden. In fact, their whole plain here that floods out, and used to flood out a whole lot worse when it rained, a whole lot worse here, was called Eden. Edin. It seems to be spelled there, but this is yellow line that I'm kind of following down right here and down into the Gulf is the Euphrates, and this other one that kind of comes close to it and then away is a wiggly thing. That's your Tigris, and it runs down and then back through here, back through right off of Basra, and comes out the Gulf here, not far off the other. And I want to mention that this whole darkened area that's right here used to be the fertile floodplain, much like the area that's in the Indus Valley, and of course the Nile, that's so famous for its things. Not a black soil like the Nile here, but more of a just a rich soil, and brought a lot of nutrients and allowed them to be able to have this periodic flood, helped them to grow out things without having to have irrigation. And then of course they developed irrigation and worked off irrigation off floods and started building dams and all kinds of things to make it happen, and floodgates. But I want you to see that here's where the Euphrates goes now with that yellow line right there. But can you tell by the cities and everything that it used to come and go around that hill and then down here and go right around the edge here, and you can see the line of it running back into itself here, and the same one going out the Gulf. In fact, the Gulf has eroded away and changed from the way that it was. It seems like there's probably a lost city somewhere that's right out in here into the Gulf, because it does not look like they had it mapped even back then a little bit. And of course, Dillman's way down here. But this is where the Desert Storm conflict happened at, though, where Kuwait City is right here, and way up here is Baghdad, where they run them through. And here's Basra, and if you'll look, all these green hexagonal and shaped and patterned spots are all modern irrigation and land and farming that are around each little clustered city too. If you look, most each one has one associated with it, and even one out here in the center. And it's a lot of new regrowth that's happening, kind of exciting after them getting all their stuff back together after There's the ancient city of Girsu right here, and we're going to take a look at it and just see what the excavation looked like. Now, Girsu is one of the more ancient cities there is, and here's a straight overhead map from 30,000 feet. So you can see a lot of plotting and farming that's going on, but this is the way the first part of it looked. And interesting effects here. You can tell how people used to walk up through on these steps. They're just now getting excavated well, but then they uncover this, and even though it looks like a basket, it's actually all made of rock that they had brought all up there and then carved out of it. So I think that's unique. So let's look at some of these things. There's all these holes drilled into the wall and pockets too, and things used to be set into these, and boards and trees from the cedarwood forest that used to surround all the area that used to be the desert. I want to interject here that it didn't used to be a desert like it is now. Just some 6,000 years ago, it rained 5 to 10 times as much as it does there now, and got enough annual rainfall and flooding and things like that to happen that it really, was a fertile plain, and it had a lot of trees and things. But in the generations of life, they've kind of ruined the area and turned it into a Dust Bowl, Oklahoma effect, where they kind of overdid the land a little bit, and in that effect kind of helped to turn it into a desert as it was becoming a wasteland anyhow. And that's all a natural cause, though, most of which is from the continental ice shelves peeling back. 10,000 years ago, the continental ice shelves were very much encroached down from the north and south, and so this middle area was the great area, as opposed to being, north and south of the equator definitely now, and the middle seems to be deserting out and wastelanding. But this used to be the more fertile area and stuff, and as it receded away, and this was the best place for people to have civilized and become modernized, it happened and kicked off here. People still fight over land like this today, over magical things that happened back then. And so here's a group of all the Bedouin or locals that are working here, and you can tell that mixed in are the archaeologists that are like here, and they're overlooking and overseeing what's going on, telling what to do. What they're basically doing here is taking down this tell, which is a giant just earth mound of, it's just a big mound, but they know under that is a city, and they wonder how far down they have to go. Well, they have to go down about 15 foot before they hit anything, and that's the tops of walls and things like that, and some 45, 50 foot below. And in fact, they need, where they're standing at now, they need to go down about 10, 12 foot before they actually get to the bottom of that. And that's the top of walls that go down, 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 and then below that, there's another city that this has been built upon. It's kind of neat, but the story here is that this guy came with a couple of travelers out here with a few camels and some crap, and had found it, and in coming back to it to get all the workers there, he handed him what was about $40, but of course this is in 1930, so that's like $600, $700 to him, and they ended up getting some 35, 40 locals that said that they would work for him for like 2 weeks or something. And so he was kind of happy and satisfied with that, as long as they would work hard, and they were happy as hell. And it didn't take long before they dug it out, and soon locals heard about it. And if you look, there's, people always said it was over 100 people, but I think the rational thought here was about 65 people worked for him, because after the first couple of weeks, he gave them another handful of money, and it ended up enveloping to 60 people, because he was feeding them and doing things also over and above. And they were like, hell, let's go do it. It's not that hard of a work. And although it is kind of hard work for these people, not so bad. They're getting paid a whole lot. They might make 15, 20 cents a day doing what they do, or luckily to make a dollar in a big transaction set through a whole set of marketing that they had to build all week up for. And this man was throwing, $10, $12 a piece at them a week. So here's ancient walls. You can tell it's kind of leaned over a little bit, but it's still all intact as they excavated down to it. And the shot that we saw a minute ago, they were up on top of this. In fact, they were almost, I'm now, the camera is standing on that hill that's not been totally excavated. They found that, but then they started doing the valley here first. And so let's go through these, and you can see how far down they had to dig before they hit what they think is the bottom, right? And this is built on crushed walls that are flattened down from before. And before that, it would have been mud bricks instead of fired mud bricks. And so it's just disintegrated away over time. But here's all the workers working out here. And believe it or not, all of this has structures all up under it. That's not the same hill right here that we were looking at before too, by the way. And digging out a whole nother area trying to find down. And of course, whenever they find anything at all, they call out. Sometimes those finds are something like this. A giant irrigation pipe, believe it or not, that allowed water to come in here and go out there. Now, they don't see anything hooking up to it and where it ran out of. It's possible girls just came up and poured water in here and it would automatically flow down and fill up some other device at one time. But here's the top of that tell now. And you remember when people were all standing right here? Well, under a bump, they found this staircase, dug it out, dug all this out, and they're still going down at this point. So amazing how much sedentary stuff had gotten on here, and it almost looks like this place is just totally buried. This is real neat. This is a excavated storage jar, and a giant urn or citern set, water holder perhaps, and or plant holder, because these people had the trees of life and things like that, and they started indoor gardening. So pretty neat. Now you can see an overlook of the whole city that they got excavated too, and it's still in 1931. So in a matter of 6 or 8 weeks, they were able to get this down. And I don't know, they didn't have an exact date on this versus date of start and everything, but now they've got it excavated to this point. You can see the amount of walls they've excavated in whole areas and how huge it starts to become. And you know, one thing you're looking at is that there's stuff all to your right, there's stuff all to your left. You're standing in the middle of it. There's stuff all behind you, and in the distance, another big mound that's as big, if not bigger, than the one you're standing on, and bumps in the ground all the way out here, here. This place is huge. So let's continue to take a look at this and stuff. But this is the André Parrot mission. It's French archaeology, 1931. This is a Tello area, which they have a Bedouin hangout that's near there. And here's the look of it right here. And let's see if I can show you this. It used to all flood out, and you can see where all this line is. This is meant to mean floodplain and grass, and even get swampy now. Okay, and but the ancient place has grown up over that and gotten huge, and it's this large bean. But this whole area here that we're looking at is where all those mounds are, and each one of those mounds is like a little circle. They've all got city growing all around them, and the size of the city and its outer walls are as big as this whole measure out here. And then if you'll look, there's an outer line that goes right here, and see if I can stay with it, up here and around. It's another set of walls. Now the neat story here is that look how the river that they irrigated it into here, and it goes through the wall, so that if they got into a conflict, they wouldn't be starved out or have their water supply taken away from them, which had supposedly happened once before to someone, and people learned a little bit. But then also it gave them a chance to have water running right through their city. I mean, what a neat idea. And it comes down and floods into a swamp area that's here. And they had also built a giant canal that ran out into this, the El Garaf, what they call Ket El Garaf here now. But and different connectors like this that brought water back in and around the city and allowed you to have floodplains go back and forth. And whenever this flooded up, this river helped to take it away from the city and around it, which was built up on a little hill and higher ground. So this is all engineered thought by far, you know, and you'd almost have to be looking at it like this to get a great idea back then, but they had it together. And out of nowhere, these people built the wheel and mathematics and the very first cuneiform writing and all kinds of exciting things. Here are some of the archaeologists in here. Now this is Girsu. It's near Lagash, that they're at their little camp that they had. And this is the Bedouin huts that they built out of the reed mats. And they would build a structure and they wrap the reed mats around it. Then you go inside and it's decent, you know. It's above your head and you have a huge area. And this is a nice one. And these are some of the armed guards. Later there's a picture of them with their weapons and stuff. But once they found the site, people started trying to come out and maybe take something or do whatever. So they hired I forget how many it was. Was it 8, or that it was 8 and it got more? It was 6 and it turned into 8, or 8 and then they got 6 more, something like that. Here's a neat shot that shows you the depot area with all the excavation equipment that they had and how they would run the tracking and then run these Indiana Jones mine carts up and down it. And they have a flap here and they dump themselves, so they can dump it off. They run up to an area and dump it off, roll it around and back. And it was a neat little idea. Of course, everybody's looking through that dump and making sure there's nothing in it as they go to put it away, but it's just a way of excavating and getting out. What I think is neat about this shot is that old car right there. If I'm not mistaken, by the way that little crest looks, somebody else might know better. I think this is an old Korg. This old Korg went all the way across the desert out here, and they built one of those little reed mat huts for it. You know, pretty cool. Anyhow, got a garage all the way out here they did for it, you know. They wanted to hide the car probably a little bit too, and didn't want people seeing it from a distance and really getting crazy about it. Nobody in this area had a car at the time. These are some of the excavation stuff that they found, and they put inside of one of the buildings. So this is actually their building, and they put up some boards, and they're just setting all the artifacts all across it. It's all kinds of different shapes, little inanimate objects, a whole lot of Inanna statues, things like that, crests, pieces of stuff that are all broken up, little vases, small little jars, bigger jars that are all through here, and only at this point a handful of tablets. But shortly they're going to pick up a wall, and when they do, they find about 25,000 tablets, and they find another cache and another cache, and it all adds up to being just short of 50,000 tablets. And many of them are just BS and transaction and stuff, but other ones tell great stories of the past. So here's another shot of their archaeology rooms, to where they would, anything that anybody found, they'd bring in, investigate, categorize, and then put on the wall with a little tag next to it, or on it, or attached, or things like that, right? So I got it all hooked up in here. It's another shot looking the other way. So hundreds of artifacts already, and they're only about halfway done with it at this point. But then they find more than twice this much again, and a lot of special artifacts are up under those walls they got to flip up. Here's one of the archaeologists. His name is Girsu, and he was excavating out and stuff. Here's one of his work tables, looking at vases and cleaning them up, and his little brushes and stuff, and then notebooks that go with it. There's pith helmet that's up here. You got to look around for a little while and see neat things too, like they brought a fancy desk out here, and a couple of them, a couple of little yard chairs that they have with canvas backs onto them for comfort. He sleeps on a woolen bed, though. It's just a flat knot. But right up here is one of the skulls they found. There's a skull, and there's a couple of leg bones with the femurs. A few other things. And a picture of a pretty blonde-haired lady. I'm not sure if that's his wife or not. They even closed off the window back here, but you can open and close it. Very much like what they would have done to it and have somebody have a dwelling in too. But here's some pictures of things that he was interested in, stuff that he hangs on the wall. They had a little time to make civilization out of nowhere. And here's the set of guards. And this is that building that they're in. That was just one of the rooms. I believe it's the one on the right that we were in just a minute ago. And there he is, armed, ready to go. They just don't need anybody trying to steal things and ruin stuff. And here's one of the skulls they found in bodies, and this might actually be the skull that we're talking about. There's another close-up shot here in a second, but this may be the one that we're seeing there. See how the skull's slightly elongated, not much, but slightly. They seem to have a squinched-in head on some of them, and a rounded head on others. It shows a different type of cephally growth in them. This is more of a squinched-in head here, and smaller nasal slits, brow line, the crest of the nasal ridge right there too, and definite Caucasians and stuff. It looks very, I don't know, I don't want to say something stupid like Greek or Turkish or people all through there, but really not much different than the man that you just saw with the rifle there. Though could have had different colored skin, hair, eyes, stuff like that. They are known to be a blue-eyed people. So, and here's the group together of some of the Bedouin guys and the guys that they hired to help them, and they're taking a picture now of him fixing to take a picture of them. Cameras were all the rage back here, and boy, they took care of them. They had them in a case, and a sack. And that was to make sure they didn't get any dust in them, because it would ruin photos in a heartbeat. And they didn't need to get there and 2 weeks into it, ruin all their photos and not get anything out of it. So here they are reading over and talking over things, and it's during a nightly get-together that apparently is right before dinner that they always had, when people were allowed to stop working and just come and hang out and cool out as somebody else was cooking dinner for everybody and getting everything together. And supplies here and stuff. Almost looks like a East India Trading Company stamp or something on it. But So very Indiana Jones, huh? Yeah, right? Yeah. Very Indiana Jones kind of stuff. And you can see these get-togethers that they had, and they would be talking, telling them what they needed, and somebody would be calling out in their language again to make sure, whether you understood English kind of or not, you need to understand what they're saying. And there they are, all lined up on the staircase. Here's your archaeologist, and then here's all the women that are carrying down, and just a dish of sand at a time. Other times they were using bags. Other times they were using different things, but you can see that cart, and it flips. Now they're having to dig out this hotel. It doesn't look like this once they get it totally dug out. There's that staircase, which they find comes up, twists, and goes right up through there. Here's one of the girls, and she's got a full bag. You know, I think stuff like this is just incredible. 1931. They even had youngsters helping out. They didn't get paid as much, though. Just a little on the side. And Sheikh Ibrahim and His Calvary. So it's a sheikh that called himself Ibrahim, like Abraham. And this is his Calvary people that came out. And they were a representation of, they were going to protect. And so after a while, once the site got really hot, apparently they had these people come out and make a showing, and then make a run around the countryside and kind of flush anybody out that was hanging around, and so on. But anyhow, look at this archway here. I mean, it's just incredible right through here, almost a Roman style archway. You see this, right? What it's missing, people, is the big cornerstone thing that goes right up in here, that headstone that sits in there. It's usually a triangle set. This looks like they've got 3 sandwiched together to make that out of, and they still have the same design, that same arch design. You can't find that at the site anymore. There's a few things you can't find at the site anymore, and I believe it. Who knows? Maybe they once got it out. Now look at that arch. And so you can see that kind of cornerstone idea, but it's not the same as the giant one the Greeks have, which is just a modernized form. And these are all fired bricks, right? Fired bricks. You can tell they're just disintegrating over time. But here's looking back, by the way, the other picture I was saying, look out here, all they've done, and then off in the distance, the tells. And behind you, there's stuff. This is the view behind you. And you can see these giant walls that are 1, 2, 3, 4, and a flat top stories tall. 4 stories tall. This would be the ziggurat that they had out in front of there. You can see all the stuff that's out here. I don't know if this was taken from a flyby on a plane or not. It seems like they're pretty high up in the air. It seems like you're almost at the height of the top of the ziggurat here, but you can see how it has just melted away over time. But it's still there under it. It's not melted away over time. It's just covered with sands and erosion and stuff. And it's in bad shape, but once you dig up under it, it's in a whole lot better shape than you ever thought it would be. Now, oh, that's a picture from 1922. Yeah, I forgot that that's a picture from 1922 from when they were finding it in the first place before they came back to do it. So now we're starting to go in pictures of the ancient site of Eridu. And I just want to show you a couple of pictures of that, but you can see how far they're going down into the ground here. They're going 1, 2, 3 stories to the flat, 4 or 5 the guy's digging. Right? Tel Abu Sarain. Eridu is the oldest, largest city in Mesopotamia. Well, there's some arrogant fighting, whether it's Ur or Eridu. Some people tried to say it was Lagash, and clearly in the tablets it talks about them building Lagash. They say that was a rebuilding. It continues. Well, there was a later rebuilding of Lagash, but there was a later rebuilding of all these cities. So, and this is how it laid out. And it actually does kind of go up a ridge, but they terraced that ridge and built all the houses on it. If you were to take them off of it, it looks like one of those Japanese rice fields. Tack, 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 with staircases running up through it and everything. So at the very first of of mankind that we see in the oldest city that we can find, they have that tech going on here. You know, these amazing Caucasian people here. A vase dedicated by Intim king of Lagash, to NinGirsu, right? Silver and copper blend together that they used to make. It's a megalum, or they have a couple other words they use for it later, and it's a conglomerate of metal, or what I'm guessing what the word meant was alloy. What we would think of now as alloy, but they didn't think of it that way. They thought it was almost magical that they were able to put these two together and make this other metal with other properties. Finely carved, though, and it's got Enlil on the side of it, and the god of the air, you know, right here around it. It's got some bulls around it. It has ancient inscription around it. I've never seen a reading of it written on anything, but look at the vase structure here and how amazing it is, and just how smoothed off, how correct formed it is and stuff. And you'd be pretty proud if you made one like that today. And that thing set up under walls and crap, crushing it for thousands and thousands of years, and end up just like that. So this was found, you know, to be around 2,400 years old at the layer that they had. And here's a little information here. So NinGirsu was also known as Ninurta. And a lot of people try to, and he's lord of barley and grain and stuff. So a lot of people try to equate and say that he was perhaps their version of Saturn. And because he was, you know, god of grain and clipping and all those type of things, god of laws, scribes, and farming. So he had the male counterpart version of what would have been Ceres, I guess. NinGirsu is the city god. Ninib and Ninip were sometimes analyzed as a solar deity, and that's the Assyrian name of it. But it's analyzed as a solar deity, but a lot of people equate it to Mars, and that Ninurta, they say Ninurta was actually Gilgamesh. I'm not Gil. Marduk, and the great god that caused all the problems and everything in the time of Aries, and then people equate that to the Aryan race that these people came out of, and indeed their land is called Sumer, and they're called Sumerians. So Aryans, Sumerians, and then they say they hail from up around Arata and Gobekli Tepe, and Arata is like Ararat. It's where the mountain is that the boat had ended up on whenever the whole plain that I showed you earlier had flooded up to the top. It only got about 15 foot deep. And it's funny, the Bible only says it gets about that deep or whatever, but it only got about 15 foot deep. But you can imagine how 15 foot deep in that whole area flooded and killed everybody off. And I'm not sure if anybody was taught to swim or anything at this time, and it caused a lot of problems. If you read the tablets, it's pretty disgusting how it goes through and everything. But Ninurta has a story too, where he goes through and he slays monsters and heroes. He does a warrior dragon, a palm tree king, the lord of Samana, the bison beast, the mermaid, seven-headed snake, six-headed wild ram. And this is all like a zodiacal story that they have. They have a slightly different zodiac and different animals and stuff, but they follow the same situation. In fact, they were the first that really had developed the idea of the zodiac and what that was, and the 4 points of it, and how those go together. And they put that 4-point together into their little cherubim type things that they had built, the Lamassu, that had human heads and cow bodies and eagle's wings and so on, like the stories you hear about in the Bible about the Ezekiel's wheel and things and stuff. And it all comes from stuff like that. And here's just a short overview of all the Sumerian gods and stuff and how they go in. And originally there's An, and An had a wife and a consort. He had Antu, and he had Kia. Now Kia is the earth, and he is the god of space. And so space and earth, and this is like the god of space coming over the face of the waters and stuff like in your Bible. She had Enki as her son. Enki is famously known as being like Neptune or Poseidon or Oannes, the fish gods. And of course there's no J back then, so Oannes, like in German, would actually be John. So you hear about John the Baptist and the water people that did the things and stuff, and that's a later recounting and pulling together of all these ancient things that went together. But sure, he's Poseidon. And of course, they call him El Triton, Da-Ia-Bal. You can be a mixture with Da-Ia-Bal as being Diablo or devil. Of course, in the Bible it says that he's going to shun this one guy and turn him into a snake and make everybody hate him. Well, of course, one of his symbols was a snake god, and it had to go with snake worship. And then everybody, if you'll look at ancient history, started going against that snake worship crap real bad, and it goes all the way through till St. Patrick gets all the snakes out and stuff. I mean, it's a cleansing of all that. And so this is like that thought of that idea about how he must have been bad. Well, really, none of these guys were bad in their own right, but then one epoch goes over another, and then when people look back later, they make up a story about how it all seemed to fit, you know. But it all goes down from here, you know, with Inanna, right? And Inanna is actually Athena, or Urantia, or Anat, or Inara, or Estara, or Asherah, who is the wife of God in the Bible. They're all the Queen of Heaven. And of course, the Queen of Heaven actually comes back from Ningal. It goes back to NinGirsu, and she is known as Mami, Ninma and Mami. She's the Queen of the Great Mountain, and she was the original Queen of Heaven that Diana, Inanna, takes over. Now this is Venus here. Utu Shamash is the sun god, right? And Shamash is the same name as in the Bible that they call the sun is Shamash. And then there's Chemosh, which is the same guy that's the sun god of the, is it the Elamites or Edomites? Or is it the, yeah, it's, yeah, okay. So, anyhow, so this runs all the way down with Lugal Banda and his wife, and that brings about Gilgamesh and his whole story, right? That runs down. And of course, you have Isis, which is also Asherah, Astarte, Aphrodite, right? Astarta, Astar. It's the name of where stars come from, of stars themselves, or stellar, right? Like constellation is Latin for with stars, like drawn with stars, like you put dots like stars and then you draw, like connect the dot when you were a kid. And that's how the pictures are made of the way people are in poses. And a lot of people don't get it, but the pose of Orion is what everybody's doing back then, even over here, even over in Egypt, whenever they're smiting the vile troglodyte Nubians all the time, or anybody that messed with them, and it shows them holding them down and fixing to hit them with the thing. It's always in this exact pose that for them was their Orion. Later, for the hunter people that ended up with bows, it ended up being Orion the hunter. And of course, the Aryan hunter Hike is the one that killed off Nimrod. And that's where the idea of the Hyksos come from, that ended up ruling part of Egypt, the lower and upper part where they were communal and cross-dressing for a long time there until everything turned to drought, and then they ended up leaving. The Hyksos expulsion is the idea of Exodus in the Bible, and it goes from there. That's in a lot of my other videos, guys, but yeah, neat. Interesting to watch this place get excavated and stuff, and to see what comes out of it. The Sumerian art, even just, you know, when we go back to old time, like what was equivalent to Egyptians, is radically different. Yet the Egyptians used the same lapis lazuli, around the eyes, and ivory peeled. You can find some Egyptian edifices where they do this, but apparently they've got to go through a lot of trouble getting the ivory. You've got to boil it and peel it and then cook it off. And how they make this pink supposedly is they soaked it in wine until it dehydrated, right? And so it'd get colors. They brought about colors in some of these with soaking them in their primitive type dyes and starting to get colors like that, which is really not dyeing, it's more like a staining. But hey, man, it works. It's a start. And these intricate inlays here, which show warriors and carts. And if you'll look, there's the wheel that they had. And the earliest wheel that we find are from these people. And it's already a two-piece composite wheel like this with double brads going on, you know, and so quite unique. And it's also fixable. If everything goes wrong, you can replace it pretty easy or rebuild it pretty easy. But yeah, so Babylonian tablets too. They ended up getting almost 50,000 out of that site. A lot of what we know now come from this site. About 1/6 of the collection of all of them that they have from all of the Sumerians and the Akkadians and stuff come from this site here and the find that they had found under those walls. Anyhow, like, share, and subscribe, guys, and enjoy. I'll have another one coming up soon with more interesting topics. Peace.